Hello, everybody, and welcome to another My Music. Now, it was an awful weekend. I have to start with that. Apart from one thing, there was one really good thing, which was that a few years back, I bought a mug for Red Nose Day, Comic Relief. And I've had that mug for several years now, but it started to fade, primarily because I put it in the dishwasher. You shouldn't put mugs in the dishwasher. Because they fade, and that's a thing. But I love that mug, and it was my cup of positivity mug, but I felt that I need to represent and be responsible, and also support Red Nose Day going forward. So I did manage to get this weekend, despite having an awful cold and whatever. I did go out and I bought myself a new Red Nose Day mug. So here it is for the first time ever. There we go. There's my new one. Isn't that delicious? There we are. So if you like Aardman, if you like Wallace and Gromit, there you go. Go and get yourself a Red Nose Day mug. In a minute, we'll be speaking to Ciara, who's coming all the way from the woods today. Is that right?
Yeah, the nice fairy tree behind me.
I love it. She will be talking to us about music, fairies, Ireland, and everything else. Straight after this little video from the people at Analog Trash. You have to wait just a minute longer, just a little bit. Ready?
Keep on, don't stop. Keep on, don't stop. Keep on, don't stop.
Thank you so much for joining me. We got there in the end, didn't we? Because we had a few technical issues with you joining, but we got there. Do you like mugs?
I have to say, well, I'm a big coffee drinker myself, and I always find like pottery mugs in particular. It's like if you get a nice pottery mug to have your coffee in it, there's nothing that beats that, really, is there?
No. Are you more of a heavyweight mug or a thin mug
Yeah.
or a heavyweight?
Heavyweight,
It's got to
all
be
the
heavy.
way.
Yeah. And you're talking like proper pottery as well, where like you go to somewhere and you see them make it, and it's a little bit wonky and a little bit widdly, and and it's got that nice glaze on it, and it maybe even have some of the earth in it, etc. You when I say earth, not literal earth, but although it's made of clay, so that is earth, but it's got that feel like it has come up out of the earth. Yeah.
You know what I love? I love items that, and in particular, like bespoke pieces that someone has poured their heart and soul into creating. I think that's what's lovely about a lot of small businesses. I was very lucky to be mentored by an amazing potter for about a year before she passed away. I wasn't expecting her to pass away either. So that was a total shock. So I haven't gone back at pottery since, but I was very lucky to get to make some creative pieces with her. But like understanding how much time goes into making a mug
Yeah.
is insane. Yeah, I'd like to think that people make these with their hands and then we can enjoy them with coffee and make memories. I just think it's a beautiful thing, and I think as we kind of become more and more into the material world and things are speeding up, I think that appreciation, we're going to come back to that. I think at some point, kind of that slower process, and it's more of value, I think, than those items that have been made with so much heart and skill. Those skills are being lost too.
They actually are. They actually are. I was writing a piece for a client today about there's one guy left in the UK who can mend braille machines. One
Wow.
guy. Yeah. Yeah.
What happens, you see, with these people, like who fills their plate, you know what I mean? So
Exactly. And people might go, oh yeah, but technology's moved on, it's irrelevant, but it's not. There are people out there that rely on these things,
yeah,
and sometimes those things, sometimes those old technologies and those old things and whatever are better as well. They're just better because they just work. Sometimes modern tech just lets us down.
well,
Point in case trying to get on this podcast today, but
this is exactly it. I know what, like in Ireland, we had a storm about 3 or 4 weeks ago, and many people were left without power and electricity and water for 3 weeks. Now you would think in 2025 that we wouldn't have, people out of power for that long, but like I know people that are still out of water after this storm that happened. It happened, I think, was it either the end of January or the first week of February, but it really wiped the country. And like there's several forests as well that have been completely just wiped from the wind. Loads of trees fell down, and of course that falls over the telecom poles and causes issues with internet and phones and everything. So it just goes to show when those times hit, people that maybe have homes that are kind of, powered by electricity in terms of their heating and everything, they were freezing. And it was kind of the more of the older generations that had those kind of open fires or kind of key simple essentials that were able to kind of get on with things.
Yeah.
So it just goes to show the disruption, because we've moved into that AI age, really, I think, in so many ways, but it's not always the reliable answer.
Something about it as well, though, isn't it? Going out, cutting some peat, you know,
Yeah, yeah.
drying it,
Watching a lovely log fire.
putting it on the fire, you know,
Yeah.
just building stuff from nothing. Something definitely about that that's so cool. And of course, all this relates back to music making as well. You know, do you think we're heading towards a time when people might actually start understanding where music comes from again?
It's an interesting one, because I've talked to a lot of musician friends about this and how the change has come about in terms of what an artist provides and what a listener is expecting. I feel like if you look at like a lot of the poets back in the past, or a lot of the musicians back in the past, they were proposing in a lot of their art and creativity either a fresh way of looking at things, a new way of looking at things, challenging the way we look at things, challenging our beliefs. It was almost like they were challenging the listener. Where nowadays and the audience, by the way, bought into that in terms of they were fascinated, I think is the word, and they would look at this and analyze it. And I feel like in some aspects that relationship with the listener has completely changed, and it's more of how can you entertain me and what can you give me, rather than how can you change how I'm looking at something. So it's, but I think that is with the evolution of people over time anyway, where we've moved into an age of mindfulness, and I think there's many amazing, incredible aspects to it. But I also think as well the danger is becoming self-obsessed and self-absorbed with constantly analyzing ourselves rather than actually going, do you know what would be more fascinating than reading a book about how to understand myself, is actually if I learned about 10 other species of fish that might be living in the ocean, just because isn't it interesting to take an interest in the outer world more. So I think, yeah, there's a lot of I think that reflects a lot in the music world too. Now there's positive aspects, I think, to that as well, but it's just an interesting watch to kind of see, all the changes happening, especially when you go out and you see a lot of live bands and they're performing covers. I work in a wedding band as well at the weekends, nighttime gigging and stuff. And, the audience are expecting, they kind of have an expectation of what they know what you're going to perform nearly. They have this idea of how the night's going to go, and it's all about crowd participation. That's all huge now, but it always, I suppose, has been. But it's just evolving over time. But I think the listener now, it's relatability rather than challenge, if that makes
Oh
sense.
goodness, I have them in this house, right? I have them in this house. There's people in this house. Will remain nameless, but there are people in this house that will judge a band depending upon how well they know the output. You know.
Yeah, and I think as well, sound, like, are we expecting to hear the same thing because we know we like this thing, or can we open our ears to going, this is different, and actually allowing yourself to listen, and then maybe listen a few times and then make your mind up about something. Gone are the days now people get a record and bring it home, and like I think a lot of the time vinyl now is becoming more popular. But I always, when I hear people telling me the stories, especially my mum's generation, going into a record store and that whole process of ordering an album if it wasn't in stock, bringing it home, flipping it over and like dissecting lyrics, dissecting the image, every little detail, and absolutely adoring that piece of art and listening to it over and over again, and knowing lyrics by heart. And I just think in some aspects, my generation anyway, we've missed out on a lot of that. You know, I remember all the
so interesting you should mention that. I was mentioning it. I get the plug-in at this point. I was mentioning this in the online community that I've set up for people that love this show and whatever.
Yeah.
Loads of musicians have joined recently, by the way. Thank you for doing that. So anyway, here it is. I don't know whether you can see that. But I actually asked that question the other day. I said to the community, I said, are people actively listening to music these days? Actively listening. That's the key bit. And people were like, well, I think so. I don't know. You know, and it was certainly some slightly different views coming from musicians to people that aren't musicians, etc. But I do believe that a lot of people think that they're actively listening, but they're probably not. We consume a lot of music on the go. We consume it a little bit in the car, or it's in the background while we work, or it's on the tannoy in the supermarket, or whatever, you know, or it's on the phone, you know, just kind of keeping us company. But we don't actually stop and actively just do nothing else but give our time and our ears to that. And I think that people don't challenge themselves enough with it either. You know,
to that, where we feel the need to speed up everything. And because I feel anyway, when you're communicating with people, you know, it's often in the pauses and the gaps and the silences and the breaths and the breaks. And it's the same with music as well. You know, that's all, there's psychology to communication. And I feel like we're skipping that. And that's, I think, a very important part of development, I think, as well. So if we don't actively participate in trying to slow the brain down, I think in many ways it can lead to a lot of happiness and anxiety and like many of these things. And I know there's lots of studies into this. So I think music is the same thing. If you can actually sit and actively listen to music, you can help slow the brain down. I recently started doing drumming lessons. And it was actually, but the reason behind it is I wanted to become more mindful and actually work on the brain. Because the older I get, the more I'm realizing, oh my God, like our reflexes, we take these things for granted in our teen years and in our childhood years because we're always developing. But then the older you get, you realize, oh, actually, I've got a huge, you know, muscle up here that I need to work out and exercise. Otherwise, it's going to start showing effects that are not so positive. So
well, that's why I do this.
Yeah.
Right? Because, like, I'm old now. Right? I'm 53 this year.
You're as old as you feel.
Well, exactly. But, you know, it's one of the reasons why I do this, and I create conversation all the time, and I want to challenge myself all the time. But we do live in an age now where people are really funny about being challenged, and they're really funny about sort of having themselves questioned. You know, that people want to put out their rhetoric, they want to put out what they know already, but they don't want to go, do you know what, I'm just going to assume that I don't know. I'm just going to assume that however much I'm an expert or feel I'm an expert in this, there's still so much that I don't know. And I love people that are sponges for like other people's knowledge as opposed to lauding up their own, you know. It's just, I just find that that's so much better. I try and get people to think every day because and I'm completely with you on this, because I just think that a lot of people out there have stopped thinking.
Completely. Yeah. Even handwriting, because we're typing all the time. I'm recognizing this lately. I'm starting to make myself write a page of writing at night, because simple things where, you know, back in the past, you just write aimlessly and not think about spelling, not think about grammar in some aspects, has become absolutely terrible because we're constantly being self-corrected now on these apps and we don't think anything of it. You just click and it corrects it for you. And I think we're coming into a time now where, like, because we're shortening words and we're trying to speed up everything. And I think we have to realize that the human body takes everything at a slower pace. And I think that, when it comes to being in the moment and the magic of living in the moment, especially when you had times where people had a telephone in the house and you didn't know who was calling, if you didn't go to the phone and pick it up in time, that call was gone. And you'd wonder, who was it that rang? Where today everybody wants you to send them a message before you call them. This cold calling is gone. Gone is the day of just picking up the phone and saying hello to someone. Everyone wants to be prepared. Everyone wants to plan. Everyone wants to anticipate what's going to happen. And I think that's an element of control. But if you allow yourself to live by that constant need to be controlling everything, I think when life, if something goes wrong, then it's a harder shock to the system, because you have to try and cope with this sudden big unexpected thing. And life is so random and unexpected. So I don't think it's a good way to train the next few generations to constantly be living life like this, or activity after activity. That break, that pause, that moment of not knowing what's next, I think is important.
So there will be people listening to this, or certainly people watching this, because I think we need to explain for people that aren't watching this what you're wearing, right? Because you have a lovely orange-y coloured cape around you. Is that right? Yep.
Yeah.
And then you have in your hair at the moment, you're wearing what do you call it? A garland of
It's like a flower crown garland, yeah.
yeah, of flowers, which are sort of predominantly sort of peachy, yellows, and some. There's a bit of green foliage in there in colour, and then you're sat in front of a lovely. Did you make that sort of drape, which has got a tree, and it's like mystical, and it's got some little angels and fairies.
I wish I made it. You're giving me some ideas though, but maybe I should make a backdrop. But I ordered this one in, but I suppose the flower crowns, where all that came from, was I grew up in a flower shop, really. My mum was a florist.
Lovely.
And yeah, so I was always surrounded by nature. Also, my dad was a farmer, so growing up rural Ireland, literally in the middle of nowhere, which is probably why the internet can be slow here at times. But I had a great appreciation kind of thrust upon me then for nature, and an understanding that when all the craziness of the world gets too much, you can actually just bring yourself into nature and you hit this ground zero. So I think, that understanding and growing up, always kind of being surrounded by nature, it has really inspired me both lyrically, both musically, and it's been a huge part of my identity. I actually ended up setting up a flower store as well.
Wow.
So and I decided to close that actually to pursue my music full time. So hence they're on my head now instead of making them for people. But it's a big part of my identity in many ways. And when I kind of started embarking on my first release from my debut album, Paint My Soul, the song was called I Am Your Healer. And at the time I was delving into a lot of Irish mythology and Greek mythology. And if you see a lot of the goddesses and the gods, they're always kind of designed or throned with all these crowns. And I had written a song that was partly inspired by both Goddess Bridget and Goddess Queen Maeve, which is native to Roscommon as well, with her stories with Rathcron and strong links there in Ireland. So I was, admiring the depictions of them, and I was filming the music video at the time. And I was like, I'm going to make a flower crown, and I'm going to just embody that essence. And so when I put the flower crown on, it was like something clicked, and it just became, okay, this makes sense. It suits my identity. It suits my branding of my music and where I'm going, because I always try to incorporate into my songs maybe a message that is nearly, at the time, it's advice for myself that comes from a higher place. Whether I'm reading, taking inspiration from a mythical legend or a source like a book or something like that. And I try to incorporate those messages into my music, because I think there's a lot to be said for listening to something and being able to take something away that makes you think differently.
Totally. Now, I've got to ask then, you see, do you enjoy opportunities like this to have a conversation and tell something of the background of all of this, because the thing is with things like pop music, etc., sometimes people will see a snapshot of you, right? They'll see an image. They'll see this young girl with flowers in her hair and this background, and they go, "Ooh, you know," and you know, clearly she's doing that as part of her image and whatever, but they're not getting to hear the story. And is that part of the problem of sort of the modern way that we get information out there on the internet and whatever, is that sometimes it's a bit, it's too quick, and we don't get to really know people properly, and we don't really fully understand the people behind the image. You know, we don't get to listen to that. Or is it just that some people will take the time and some people just will never take the time because they just don't care?
I think it's an interesting one. Maybe it's slightly different today, but the perception I always had of an artist and of a songwriter is somebody who's probably had some sort of trauma or interesting experiences happen for them. And so they literally find themselves leaning on music as their form of therapy and healing. And then that searching that often is written into music by many artists. So I think that the journey of the artist is something we should kind of be, well, I've always been curious of. I'm not sure, again, as a musician, that's always been my thing, to be fascinated. Like, I look at Joni Mitchell and like, wow, her life and her story. Even Cher, remember Sonny and Cher, they had their song, slipping my mind right now, but her story with Sonny
I
as
Got
well,
You,
before
babe.
that's it, yeah. Like, even their story before she had her own solo career and stuff like that. So I've always been fascinated by the journey of an artist and how they look at things, and I've tried to understand their mind and maybe their processes. And you often look at some interesting interviews and you're like fascinated by them. But I think today's world, it's more of everyone wants to relate, I think, to the artist. And I think we can. There is a matter of, there could be a nice balance. I also think, though, it depends as well with how comfortable the artist is with sharing themselves. And I think that's also changed a lot. Kind of people in the past, like, you could expect to create your art and then just put it out there, and then the art will sell itself. Where today it's very different. It's amazing that we have social media. Don't get me wrong. Like, isn't it incredible that we have an audience there, that we can upload a video within seconds and an unlimited amount of people can access that video? Like, that's incredible. It's a lot. Although financially, there's a lot of different struggles today, I think this is an unbelievable tool. There's so many artists we may never have came across or heard of if they didn't have the social media platform that they blew up on. But there is that, you need to create a sense of community now, I think, for a lot of your listeners or your fans or people that resonate with your music. And I'm getting, like, this year now, I've been challenging myself. I do have a story. Maybe if we've time, I might tell it. I witnessed a miracle when I was 6, and that was the precipice as to why I wanted to go into music and kind of write a lot about spirituality in my music. So it depends how comfortable you are, I think, as an artist with telling your story.
Yeah. It's a miracle. Tell us a little bit. Can you? We don't have a huge amount of time, but we have. Can you give us the abridged version?
Yeah. So I guess, like many kids, when you're 6, I wanted to swing. I had no patience. Mom and Dad was like, "Wait till Santa brings you one at Christmas." And I was like, "No, I want it now." So I took a hula hoop. I used to watch High Five, and on High Five, I don't know if anyone remembers it watching right now. There was this girl used to swing from a hula hoop, and I was like, I'm going to make a swing from a hula hoop. So I climbed out through the bottom of the hedge, brought a skipping rope with me and tied it onto the hula hoop, walked up through the field at the back of the house. Bear in mind, my dad also had a quarry at the time, along with a farm. And there was these, they were way up the field. Like, I ran through the fields. I was a devil. I shouldn't have been doing that at all. And I went up to, basically, these are like screening gates. They're made of steel. Normally, you would actually have to get conveyor belts to lift them, to get them actually out of a container or whatever. And they were standing up, kind of leaning over slightly on the side in the field. And I went up to one of the biggest ones, and I decided, I can swing out of that, and I'll hook it there and it'll swing like that. So I went to throw it up on it, and I went to pull it, and I pulled it down on top of me. And so it basically sliced right through my right leg, breaking all my major bones, tibia, the fibula. So my leg was basically hanging off, bones completely broken. It was just skin keeping it all together. And then I was lying probably there, I reckon, unconscious for maybe 10, 15 minutes. I don't know. And my granddad at the time, who was in the yard, was wheeling a wheelbarrow. And I kind of woken up just startled and saw him, but he was wheeling it out of the yard and he hadn't seen me. And so I started to call for him and he didn't hear me. But he always said to me, Ciara, something made me turn around. So he turns around and comes basically just at the right, you couldn't make it up, the right eye line, just sees me and comes running over and goes to try to lift it. Now, obviously, one man can't lift this, So he tries to lift it, can't lift it. And then he just looks up to the sky and goes, good God, give me strength. And he just lifted it up off me and gently brought me out. And I remember when that was happening, like I wouldn't have that many vivid childhood memories, but out of all the things that's happened to me in my life, that I remembered and remember so, so clearly. And I remember just feeling this, I don't know how to describe it, but it was almost like a presence around me, or just this feeling of like, I've got you, and that like you're here for a reason, you're here for a purpose. And I felt like I was given a second chance, but also I was very aware I have something to do here. I don't know, it's just that's always been my thing. So throughout life, I guess I couldn't walk for 6 months, right? So I threw myself into music. My grandmother was a musician and she came down as well and helped mum with me and stuff because I was going around with big casts and stuff. And I threw myself into music just at 6, just watching hours of musicals all day long and singing. And that was my healing. And I just knew, I was like, this is what I'm meant to do. So it was, that's been my driving force. And it's funny, I only told my actual story this year, and I wasn't even expecting it. Kind of came out very just naturally on a big radio station. And I think since I've done that, I feel like it's lifted a weight off my shoulders because I'm being fully myself now. I think for a long time, if you don't tell your story, and I don't know why that's connected sometimes to your art, but for me, that's been a big block that was in my way, not actually saying my why behind what I do,
It's everything. The why behind
Yeah.
what you do is absolutely everything.
Yeah.
Wow. What a story. And clearly you're meant to be here doing this. Clearly.
Yeah. I believe it.
No, absolutely. There will be people listening now that will be probably in tears, etc., from hearing that, because it is very powerful. And I think this is it, isn't it? I mean, we get presented with a version of a truth all of the time on social media or whatever. But I think it's one of the reasons I wanted to do this was because I think when you get people come on and we have these chats and people share their actual truth. Yeah. There's something so powerful about that. And I think that is what brings people to art a lot of the time, right? Because sometimes we don't sit in silence and make time. And I think in this world where everything's so fast and so busy and, we're just trying to get to the next thing and whatever all of the time, I think unless we are stopped dead by stories which make us re-evaluate our own stories and put them into perspective and make us think about, oh, what is this all about? Why am I doing this? We risk not finding this wonderful stuff in the world,
That's exactly it. And I think, everyone has a story to tell.
Everybody. Where's your favorite place in nature?
The forest. If there's just a big tree, I just love to sit under the tree, or I'll meditate, or I don't know, there's something very, like, if you think about it though, trees need us and we need trees. And what I mean by trees need us, I mean, like, I feel like it's our part of our duty here to look after nature. I don't mean they physically need us, because sometimes I think we're doing more damage than good, but I believe that we can be better. And I think the only way to kind of do that is if you can just show up yourself maybe that 1 or 2% better. Like one of my friends and I at the weekend, we took a jellyfish off the sand and put it back in the water. Like that's a small little thing that may have stopped that jellyfish from, I don't know, passing away without oxygen. So I think there's like there's little things we can do. Because I think it's too monumental to think of those big problems. You know, you're not going to change those big corporate companies, but what you can do is make a little difference.
Absolutely. I think nature does two things for us. I think it actually shows us that we can do those big things, but I also think it makes us realize how insignificant we are.
Absolutely.
In the big picture of it. I love standing by the ocean. That's another thing. I just love standing by the sea just because it's so big. You know,
this is it. And sound, what a soundscape.
Yeah, it's just. I just think we just don't take those moments to necessarily. I think we fill ourselves with our own self-importance.
There you go.
All of the time, and I don't think we look outwards enough. And getting back to nature, I think sometimes just helps us get that perspective, and then we need to start doing that with people. Yeah, I think that's the key. We need to really start doing that with people. It's another reason why we started the community as well. I say we because although I technically started it, I believe it belongs to the people in the community. Because we just saw so many communities out there where it was all centered around a person. It's like, well, what's that all about? That isn't what community is. Community is where you help build everybody in the community, right? That's community.
100%, yeah.
This is great. This is great conversation. Tell us before you go. Look how quickly the time's gone.
It's 4:44 on the clock.
It's crazy. By the way, do you like my new space lights today? Little space.
It's very cool. I like it. It's a vibe.
It's it's happening in some shape or form. Tell us before you go about your latest music that you have out.
Yeah, so I recently put out a song called Dreams. It's available to stream everywhere, but basically the precipice for this song was a conversation that I had with a friend about, she kind of had many regrets about her career. And, you know, she worked in the medical industry, and she's, Ciara, I saved so many lives, they don't even know my name. She's like, I just love one song to just take off and go somewhere and do its thing and blow up. And I wish I gave my music its full attention, everything that it needed, to bloom. So that kind of got me thinking. Around the same time as well, I had a friend of mine that recently got diagnosed, and she's quite sick at the moment. And I was thinking about, you know, age versus wisdom versus hindsight, and all these things are playing up on my mind, and regret, and about going for your dreams. So really the song is almost like a screaming, a warning, like to just go for your dreams. And like there's a lyric in it, 2 hands on the wheel, your world is at your feet, you're in the driving seat. Like there's I think it's about taking a certain amount of accountability, which is a hard thing to do, but we really are, you know, we can rely, like luck is an element obviously of anything.
Well, it's down to hard work that you put in. So I think it's important to go for your dreams while you can, and just embrace them in life. They'll teach you so much. You'll grow from them. So that's what that song is all about: embracing dreams. And what happens to these dreams when we don't follow them? Where do they go? Do they get given to somebody else as an inspiration? They're all thoughts I've always had about this. So I've woven that into the song. It's the first single off the album that's upcoming. That'll be dropping on the 2nd of May. It's called Divine Intervention, and it's where basically a lot of the thought process I was going through in my life at the time recording it and writing the album really changed my world. So that's basically what a divine intervention is. So it's like that big shift in your life where you're going this way, but then you go that way, and you weren't expecting to go that way. So, and because something happens that puts you in a different place that was meant to happen to bring you there, because you wouldn't be there if this didn't happen because you were going that way. So that's to sum it up the whole album, basically.
I think the whole area of dreams is really fascinating, and you know, thank you for sharing that as a piece of music. Because, and I think that, like, you know, when you're 18, 19 or whatever, you potentially have these massive dreams, and you think you're going to change the world, and you're going to do this, and you're going to do that, and you're in a place where you can be a revolutionary and things go, but then you discover actually, like, a lot of the world is trying to get you back into a little box, and you need to, you know, you need to conform to this or that in order for this to happen or that to happen, and you meet other people. You know, it's hard. It's hard.
I think so, and I think, you know, the ego has this way of tricking us into understanding what success is, and success for somebody is getting up and having a great day. Success is like, it could be, you know, just ticking off that thing off the list that you needed to do. Or again, for me, it's like putting out that song that resonated with me, and I feel like I hope will resonate with other people. I think success is something we have to really sit with ourselves and ask ourselves, like, where are we putting all this fear and pressure to achieve this certain thing, when actually it's the process that's the most important part of the whole thing. And I think if you can't learn to enjoy the process, and you're afraid of making, and if you fear making mistakes, then success won't mean anything to you. I had a great conversation with a friend. I'll briefly say this, and you know, she achieved everything she wanted to achieve, but when she achieved it, she didn't feel anything. And the reason why was because she said she wasn't locked into the process, and she was so busy having her mind here for when she achieved it that she wasn't present through the process. So, and that's a relearning to try and embody that again, you know. So I think success really is different for everybody. It's not necessarily being on a big billboard in New York City. It's not being on stage in front of thousands of people. For some people, it's just getting through that week that was tough, or it's just making that piece of art that you've been putting off for months or years and putting it out there and going, I'm proud of that. And I think that's what success can be.
I think that's very wise of you in your tender years. For me, I think personally, I think success has shifted. I certainly don't think about success in the same way that I did when I was younger, and I certainly feel now like the way that I measure success is helping other people to achieve what they need to achieve. That to me is success.
Love it.
You know. Wow, we got deep today, folks.
Yes.
If you enjoyed getting deep too,
deep in the forest.
do comment on the post. You know, by the way, when this goes out on Spotify, there is a thing where you can, like, comment, and same on YouTube, etc. You can actually put comments on there. Some of the episodes get more comments than others, but do feel free to join in the conversation. I always take those on. And if you really like getting involved in the conversation, you really like thinking, and you like, you know, actually continuing to learn and develop and grow, then join the community. That's all I'm going to say on the matter. It's there for you to do. You can find the podcast and the community at mymusicpodcast.com. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you so much for having me on your show.
I've enjoyed that conversation.
My music, you can find me at Ciara Lawless HQ.
She said it herself so well, which was wonderful. We will be back soon with more of the same. Until then, look after yourselves, and we'll see you around.